Hey, Ellen. Okay, so I think this is supposed to be your portrait, but though to me it seems more like a vocational shot, but it's your portrait. This is your still life. Nice still life. Here is your long shot, and then here is your vocational shot. This is really interesting, though. I want to say that it's narratively awkward because it looks like a car crash. You know, there's this shoe like lying here haphazardly. There's this man being squished here. You know, it actually looks rather violent. It doesn't fit. I mean, I understand that you were thinking it's a good vocational shot, but it's actually really misleading and it looks like a scene of violence. I hope you're laughing because it's actually funny, but I don't know. It doesn't. But this is, you know, a long shot, then your still life, and then this is your portrait. But it's more like a vocational shot to me. So I see here that you didn't use any light modification tools or lighting equipment. And in a lot of your shots, in a lot of this setup here, you would have had a much easier job if you would have. For, you know, the whole time the car is inside the garage, you would have had a much easier job if you would have just set your lights up in there and then shot with them. And then here, you know, he's really dark. There's this like, there's no light here describing his face at all. You know, and if this is a portrait, he as an individual is the subject. Right now the subject is the action here. He's looking at this car, thinking about it. He's not really very important. It's that there's a person looking at a car that's important. If you would have just bounced a little bit of light back up into his face, we've had more light on his face describing him as an individual, it would feel more intimate, it would be a portrait. But right now it's more of an action shot. I mean, I realize it's a slow action, but it's still an action shot. And then here, I think that this is actually a really nice still life. I know that the composition's lovely. You know, the detail's very good. You know, it's actually really, it's nice. It's clearly, we're talking about mechanics here. The long shot, yeah, I guess, you know, I guess that's fine. And then, like I said, this just narratively doesn't read very well. It just doesn't. And so we had hoped for this assignment that students would take their tools and use them, take their lighting tools and actually use them so that you could harness light as a narrative and descriptive tool like I described in all of my clarifications for this assignment. And that just isn't happening here. You know, you're just shooting with the available light. And I know that you metered a lot to try and solve that as a problem, and that helps for exposure, but it doesn't do anything to bring visual emphasis to the parts of your image that are important. Because like I said, you know, in this image, you know, you could have used lights to make some, like you're outside, you could have even used your lights outside to make some nice bright highlights anywhere on this car so that it could differentiate a little bit, because this is a visually busy scene, you know, and there just needs to be more separation between what's going on here in different areas. You know, you could have turned the lights on in hidden spots in the garage so that it was really brightly lit compared to the outside. That would have added a lot of visual emphasis to the work that goes on in this garage. You know, there's a lot of possibilities with your lights here that just weren't explored. You know, same here. You know, like you could have had lights coming from underneath shining up at him to add a lot of visual emphasis to this image. So that's really where we're failing here. And not, you know, failing is a strong word, but that was an oversight. You know, it was really a mistake to not use your tools. And that's about it. I mean, I see that you got a whole lot of images and you tried a whole lot of different stuff, but you didn't really take control of the situation. You're pretty passive here. You know, I've just finished looking at about 20 of these assignments, and I see a lot of photographers who had a very passive approach to this. And what we want is for you to have an active approach, and you do that by controlling light. You know, and also controlling your tools, like choosing very specific millimeter lenses for creative reasons, choosing a specific aperture for very creative reasons, shutter speed for very creative reasons. Like, all of those things are supposed to help you with your narrative, and it doesn't feel to me like they're being harnessed here. And that's my feedback. I hope that makes sense, and I guess I'll see you in week 6. Thank you.